Valedictory statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make this my final statement in the debating chamber of the 50th Parliament of New Zealand. May I begin by acknowledging some of those that have put up with the 4-metre swells across the Cook Strait today to be with us. My electorate chair, Brian Moore, his wife, Rebecca, campaign chair, Alan Holdaway, branch chair and hoarding manager, Barry Holdaway, branch chair, Don Moore and his wife, Sue, and may I also acknowledge Sir Doug and Lady Kidd. Also my staff, my most valuable staff in Blenheim and Amberley, Cathy Ferguson, Willie Corbeck, Rose Parsons and Jan Chisnell. My parliamentary staff over the years I should say, Margaret Trail and now Karen Scarlett. Thank you for your support. It was just fantastic and well beyond what anybody could possibly expect. I must acknowledge also with great pride and satisfaction the support I've received from my wife Lynette and our children Nicholas, Natasha, Larissa and Katrina. I must also take the opportunity of acknowledging the wonderful support that I've received from the National Party and the privilege of being an MP for 9 years, both from the political wing and the party membership. Thank you for the guidance and the support over those 9 years. I wish the National Party every success in the forthcoming election, and we wait with bated breath to the election result on the 20th of September. Go well. Last week I did something, Mr. Speaker, that I'd hoped to do for many a year, and that was to visit the whale counting operation that occurs every time this year in the Tory Channel and Cook Strait. Fortunately, on the day that we went out, the observers perched up on Tory Channel had sighted a large humpback whale cruising through the Cook Strait on its way to the tropics. We were able to just motor straight out there and watch these guys in a little 4-metre runabout in a 3-metre swell dart the whale to take a DNA sample. And just to give you some understanding about how difficult it was, I could hardly hold my camera, my iPhone camera, to actually capture the moment to post it on Facebook. And from the point of view of what's gone before us in history, in the context, it was most uplifting. You could entitle the situation "Whaling from Decimation to Restoration." These old ex-whalers are now spending endless hours looking into the mist of the Cook Strait to identify that pencil shape of a whale coming towards them. And the good news is that about 100 whales came through the Cook Strait during the month, and isn't that fantastic? Now there's more ways for the whales to go, but through the Cook Strait it's a bit like the drafting race. You can count them. So from that point of view it's a good measure. So I want to make the point that while we may have a strong view on how people earned their livings in years gone by, they did sustain themselves, and we should neither condemn nor ridicule. Sure, the land-based whaling operations didn't decimate the whales. The damage was done by the fleets of whaling vessels from other nations that hunted the whale to near extermination, taking up to 4,000 a whale a year on year. However, I make the point because I personally have serious concerns, along with many others, about the attitude of our attitude to sustainable management around the coastline. Today, there's 10 times as many people out on the coastline collecting kai moana. The targeting of fish, the catching of crays, the caking of paua and other delicacies has greatly improved, and yet we still argue that it's our birthright to help ourselves to such a resource. Mr. Speaker, as rational human beings, we know that continuing such a harvest of our kai moana will result in serious consequences for us today and for our future generations. It is therefore with much pride that I draw on the example of the community of Kaikoura, who over the last 8 years, based on the principles of gifts and giving, were able to reach an agreement across the full range of stakeholders: iwi, commercial fishers, recreational fishers, forest and bird and the wider community. They were able to agree amongst themselves as the best way possible for the outcome of managing their coastline between the Conway River and the Clarence River. And I was amazed to witness the cooperation that existed on that group of Kuawai people. It was with pride that I now look forward to this process of seeing the passing into law the Tai o Marakura Bill, which will enshrine the management plan into law and protect for the benefit of all Kaikoura and others that visit her in the many years ahead. What made this achievement was that those involved, the community, clearly understood what was at stake. Local iwi, that's Ngāti Kuri, led because it held the kaitiaki over the area. The commercial fishermen because they owned the quota and they knew what sustainable management was all about. And the wider community stuck to the task because they knew and valued the employment and they valued their environment. There's no doubt in my mind that this situation is going to have to be replicated throughout New Zealand. Such iconic places as the Marlborough Sounds, the Hauraki Gulf, the Wellington Headlands, the Bay of Plenty and Northland coastline, to name it a few, will need to address this situation as pressure remains and grows. Again, it will require skillful leadership, a willingness to agree and make those gifts and giving. We must face up to the challenge, otherwise we'll end up exactly the same position as those whalers who lost their careers, their opportunities, their profitability overnight because of a culture of greed and a race to catch the last whale. Mr. Speaker, my second point that I'd like to make is the importance of hands-on learning within our education system. We must appreciate these very important students who, in the future, will continue to fix things, build things, be it trucks, be it motor cars, be it buildings, be it bridges, be it roads, essential infrastructure and all other manner of things. To do this, the education system must equally value these people as we do doctors, nurses, lawyers and accountants, and design an education curriculum accordingly. And I just sort of put it out here in very plain terms. To put it simply, we want to create many Einsteins, but when you create an Einstein, you need to also have 1,000 skilled technicians to be able to make those things. I wish to mention two people by name at this time, and it's always dangerous doing that, but two people have had a big effect on my policy development. Firstly, Stuart Middleton from Monaco Institute of Technology, who when I first came into Parliament was already talking about what was lacking within our education system. He's gone on to do some wonderful things around empowering youth, especially Pacifica youth. And I take the opportunity here to say how heartened I am to see the Pacifica people taking grasp of education and being aspirational. I also want to make a mention of Stuart Thompson, who worked with me in developing the Trades Academy policy, which was introduced by the government in 2009. Stuart Thompson convinced me that the passion of an inspiring teacher is what makes the difference. Stuart's technology classes were full to overflowing, and total engagement with education existed in spades. I ask those responsible for education in the future to maintain the momentum we have for hands-on learning, skills-based education. Education must be relevant to the learners for them to remain engaged and develop the skills necessary to be successful in life. And that is a pretty high threshold. We must keep them engaged. We are beginning to do better, but there is a lot of work we need to do yet. Mr. Speaker, my third point I want to leave with the House is my concern around a growing reluctance in this country, and this is my observation, to a reluctance to undertake physically demanding work. We should be concerned when we see those who want to continue living in one location and are not willing or courageous enough to collect up their families and move to where employment is better and more available, where the cost of living is less and the price of providing a roof over one's family's head is also less. New Zealand has one of the most generous welfare systems in the world. However, For New Zealand to remain a first world country, we must possess the attitude as stated by George St. John and restated by President J.F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. That it is good to create wealth and to seek ownership. I admire greatly those Eastern European families that came here in the 50s and the 60s. I was only a child at the time. They made New Zealand their home and they started afresh after experiencing the Second World War, the Cold War and the Iron Curtain. It now concerns me that we do bring enthusiastic workers from the Pacific Island to do the harvesting and cultivation within the horticultural sector. That we need to bring thousands of workers to fill the needs of the dairy industry. Isn't it blindly obvious to all that in doing the work that some of us despise, that these newcomers end up creating wealth for themselves and their families to enjoy into the future? It's all symptomatic of a nation that is losing its way when a newcomer can come here and see opportunities that we can't. Individually, we hold the key to our own success: careful living and good, honest, hard work. Personal responsibility and a desire to aspire should be the aim for us all. Lose this and we become no better than a domesticated animal. Sir Henry Maine, speaking on social structure, put it well when he said, "Nobody is at liberty to attack private property and to say at the same time that he values civilization. The history of the two cannot be disentangled, for the institution of private property has been a wonderful institution for teaching man and woman responsibility, for providing motives to integrity, for supporting general culture, for raising mankind above the level of mere grudgery, for affording leisure to think and freedom to act. To be able to retain the fruits of one's labour, to be able to see one's work made manifest, to be able to bequeath one's property to one's posterity, to be able to rise from the natural condition of grinding poverty to the security of enduring accomplishment, to have something that is really one's own. There is advantages with this, difficult to deny." In crafting policy and bringing forth legislation in this House, may all members continue to recognise the value of those who toil in the sun or labour under the tin roof, neither despising the value of that work or thinking that it is beyond one's dignity, because the wealth of this nation was created on the back of physically demanding labour. In conclusion, may I express my sincere thanks to all members of the House for the courtesy that they have afforded me. Thank you too for the joy of working for the best interests of all New Zealanders, particularly in the primary sector, in the science and education sector, while in Parliament. I'm sure, though, that those that are coming behind us will be more than equal to the task. We do live in a blessed land. To the Parliamentary Sporting Trust, what fun we had in raising money for the most worthy of causes. For the camaraderie of winning 2 Parliamentary Rugby World Cups, one in Paris and the other in New Zealand. The pleasure of coordinating the Parliamentary Diplomats' annual cricket challenges and winning a few. That's quite good. I always remember Paul Swain, Mr Speaker, leaving the House here having won that year against the Diplomats. That having been said, we hadn't won for many years, about a decade. So I'm asking the House to make sure that they support Ian McKelvey as he carries on the mantle of looking after the Shield and keeping that cricket match going. It's been going over 40 years and it's actually quite an illustrious Shield with some great MPs on it. If I have one disappointment in leaving Parliament, Mr Speaker, it's possibly one we share together, and that is that wisdom has not prevailed when it has come to storing water in North Canterbury. Sadly, and this again is my observation because I know that some of my Green colleagues would disagree, it is my view that a dog-in-a-manger attitude still prevails, making progress slow and difficult. So finally, I wish to thank the taxpayers of New Zealand for providing the funding for 3 new hospitals while I was MP in the electorate of Kaikoura. I'm also delighted to have witnessed as MP the Titao Ihu settlement, treaty settlement situation that has provided 8 iwi with their settlements, which will restore their economic base into the future. Also being a witness and part of the 8 years of the labour of love, the management of the Kaikoura coastline, the result of which is this bill here, which is under a pile of papers, that I look forward to being put through the House completely by the time the House rises. And I thank the Minister, and I also thank the Leader of the House for putting that in place. So we are very satisfied with most of everything that's going forward. So just to conclude, but for the most part, from my own point of view, what is most satisfying is the momentum that has been achieved around education, the importance that has been put on the hands-on learning situation. Education is relevant. It needs to be relevant. If it's not relevant, you'll have disengagement. And I want to thank everybody for the situation that I've enjoyed over the last 9 years. I acknowledge my wife and children. I acknowledge those people that have travelled across the Cook Strait. I also acknowledge those people who are supporting departing members, and I also acknowledge all the members in the House. We have worked in the very best interests of New Zealand. Kia kaha, stand tall, be proud. Thank you very much.
I call the Honourable Chris Tremaine to make a valedictory statement.
Mr. Speaker, in life there are many different definitions